You're a Jags fan, you're an NFL fan, and it's simple. You're looking for the best Jaguar content out there, and it's right here on the Poojie podcast. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment your thoughts and questions, and support the channel. Subscribe, and subscribe again. What is he doing? Nah, bro, I think he's legit. You just can't do that in that situation. Nah, you couldn't be more wrong. Yeah, I could agree with that. This is the Poojie Podcast. What is going on, Pooj crew? Thanks for tuning in to episode 144 of the Poojie Podcast. Packed episode today, breaking down the Jaguars-Lions game, get a preview the Jaguars-Titans game, and go through all other NFL topics following Week 13, looking ahead to Week 14 as well. I want to welcome in Kyle again for this episode. Appreciate you being here.
Yep, thank you for having me as always.
So Jaguars fall in Week 13. They had a spot, an opportunity to do something special this season and come up with the fattest ostrich-size egg you could possibly imagine in a game that kind of determined the trajectory of the rest of the season.
Yeah, very upsetting. A team that I would, and as I said last week, kind of on our plane as far as, has played a lot of tough games. There are signs of life, but just can't get it together. Well, they were not on the same plane as the Lions on Sunday. So very frustrating, especially going into next week playing the Titans. They lost, of course, to the Eagles. So as we're watching this game and we're just not getting it together, very frustrating.
Yeah, the only plane the Jags looked to be on was one back to Jacksonville halfway through the first quarter because the Lions looked head and shoulders better than the Jaguars. Jared Goff looked like an MVP candidate in one game, over 330 yards in that one, was just out there dominating, slicing up a defense that at times this season looked promising, and they looked abysmal this game in the 40-14 loss at the hands of the Detroit Lions. Really not much to talk about as a Jags fan. Not many positive takeaways, not much hope going forward, but let's do our best to try and cut through all the weeds and the roughness and talk about this one. Jaguars start the game with the ball, and an ETN fumble 2 plays after kickoff led to the Lions' first touchdown of the game, and that would not be their last. That would be one of many that they had. I believe they had 4 touchdowns, but ETN fumble obviously put the Jaguars behind the sticks and really made the Jaguars look like a team that just can't overcome those types of mistakes early in a game.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it before, him having fumbling troubles, the costly one against the Giants. That was the big momentum turn in the game. In this one, it unfortunately happened a minute into the game. It was also a 13-yard run that he had broken off. It looked great. And then he fumbles it. Lions get the ball, and they really didn't look back from that point on.
Yeah, it's kind of embarrassing when you're going up a team that you perceive to be on the same tier as you as far as their trajectory. They're in the rebuild mode, if you want to call it rebuild mode. But for the most part, these two teams have been bottom dwellers in the NFL for the last few times, or for the last few decades, if you will. And the Jaguars did not do well to separate themselves from the Lions in this one. The Lions did great to separate. Well, I guess they did separate themselves, as obviously not to the level that the Lions are at right now. But from watching the game, Kyle, the bits that you saw and the replays you watched, kind of what was it? What was the difference between these two teams on that game Sunday?
Yeah, so it comes down to the ball control. I mean, I think they had the ball for 36 minutes and change compared to 23 and change for us. With that said, like I mentioned to you, we did hold them to 4 field goals, and I'm not saying that's great, but it could have been a lot worse because the Lions scored every time they had the ball, except at the very end of the game when they took a knee. So the fact that we held them to 4 field goals when they got in the scoring range, if our offense could have even gotten something together, especially kind of like towards the end of the first half, start of the second half, it was still a 2 or 3 score game, but it didn't fully look out of reach just because the Lions were getting stopped and having to kick a field goal. With that said, we couldn't get their offense off the field. The Lions were 8 for 12 on third down. Like I mentioned, the time of possession was very lopsided, and they also had 31 first downs compared to our 14. So those are things that typically add up to a complete beatdown, and that's really what we saw. Again, it was 23-6 at halftime, just, kind of on that edge of if this is out of reach or not. Lions got the ball to start the half, went right down the field, scored a touchdown. We got the ball back, went on a almost 8-minute drive and scored a touchdown. But by that point, it was almost the fourth quarter and we were down 16 and we just couldn't stop them.
Yeah, I feel like the biggest difference for me was just simply the energy. Both these teams entered the game 4-7, and it looked like the Lions were playing at a level that they still believe they can win the division, even though they cannot. Whereas the Jaguars have a chance to win the division, and they looked like they were playing for the number 1 overall draft pick in that game on Sunday. The energy level, the disparity in that was just completely different. The Lions losing by 3 points 10 days prior on Thanksgiving to the Bills. Obviously a confidence boost for them. They know they can hang with the right teams. That's a sign that they are doing the right things as a team and just need to do one or two more things correctly to get over the hump to get the victory. And it almost looked like they took out a little bit of Thanksgiving anger on the Jaguars from letting that game slip against the Bills. And the Jags just didn't know how to respond. The Jags kept taking left hook after right hook after uppercut, body shots, and the Jags just stayed down on the mat and never really responded. They did go down the field, get a field goal right after the Lions touchdown, 10 plays, right over 3.5 minutes. Kind of felt like they were settling in a little bit. But it really, in this game, it came down to the defense not making stops. Let me preface that by saying the Jags offense did not do their part either. This loss, while majority of it lies on the defense, you should never allow 40 points, especially to the Lions. The offense did not do their part either, but the defense really came up lacking in this one. Aiden Hutchinson had himself a game with a sack as well. Travon Walker was kind of non-existent at times, so that was painful, I know, for Jags fans to watch as well. But between these two teams, Kyle, what would you just say, moving forward from this point is kind of the outlook for these two teams? 6 games left, I believe it is, 5 games left. What direction are these two teams heading?
Yeah, and sorry, I'm looking at my notes here that I have from last week. The Lions have given up the most yards per game going into this last game. I think we talked about that, obviously. 414 per game. The Jaguars got 266. So I'd say figuring out how to stay consistent on offense is going to have to be something the Jags look at. Limited turnovers, keeping the ball moving down the field, not having to settle for punts and field goals. So very frustrating. I think the Lions, and I've said it kind of all season, they've had some close losses. They've played very tight games. You can tell the players believe in Dan Campbell. They like playing for Dan Campbell. They have 2 very good options at running back with DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams. Both were getting in the mix. Both had a touchdown. Amon-Ra St. Brown looks awesome. DJ Shark with another big game. Kind of saw a revenge game last week for Josh Oliver, who had a touchdown. DJ Shark 2 yards shy of 100 yards. So I don't know. Going forward, it pains me to say, but the Lions seem like they might be a little more complete or at least clicking. The Jags, I would say, have the brighter outlook as far as the pieces are concerned with Trevor Lawrence and ETN and whatnot. But just 2 teams that we thought were kind of similar just looked totally different on Sunday.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Great way to put it there. To get to some disparities, time of possession, Lions almost 37 minutes, Jaguars just north of 23 minutes. First downs, Lions 31, Jaguars 14. The Jaguars had as many first downs in this game as they did points. That's crazy. Laughable. That's ridiculous. Total plays, Lions 74, Jaguars 55, and then total yards, almost a 200-yard disparity, 437 to 266 in favor of the Lions. Again, we mentioned that the Jags made Jared Goff look like an MVP candidate. The Lions did only have 100 yards on the ground, but they didn't really find the need to run the ball at all because the secondary wasn't doing anything to stop the pass, and I think that comes down a lot to the way the linebackers were playing in coverage. If you watch the game and you go back and watch the game, you can tell the Lions were taking advantage of the weak spot in the Jags defense, which is linebacker coverage. DeAndre Swift, even Justin Jackson got involved. Jamal Williams out of the backfield, a lot of running back dump offs to just wide open guys, like wide open, even on third downs. Lions 8 for 12 on third down. A lot of third and shorts that they just dumped it off to the running backs to get the first down. This Jaguars team has a lot of problems. What would you say is the number one problem for this team on defense at the moment?
On defense, I mean, it's really 2. It's coverage and tackling. But I think it's really coverage, whether it's the linebackers or the secondary. I mean, they were just wide open. Third and long was no problem for the Lions. I went back and kind of rewatched the abridged highlights of the drives. And that was something that stuck out to me was they're just getting so wide open, whether it's over the middle, whether it's in the flats. Even when we had a play on the first drive where we deflected it, it looked like our guy made a good play. Amon St. Brown ended up catching it, got him down to the 1 yard line, and then Jamal Williams pounded it in. So secondary help definitely needs to be a focus in the offseason.
Yeah, you talk about that Amon-Ra St. Brown catch. It really felt like the momentum turned quickly in the first quarter, and the Lions never looked back. And it felt like one of those games where it was like, okay, if the Jags can just get one thing to go their way, if it's even just a first down or a long completion, a big run, just something to build momentum. And the Jaguars never had that spark play, if you will. There was nothing ever that felt like the Jags could build off of. And every time they punted, the Lions capitalized on it. You mentioned 4 field goals to Mary with 4 touchdowns. The Lions were 4 for 4 in the red zone. The Jaguars were 1 for 2. Speaking of punts, I will say this. Last 3 games, Kyle, how many punts have the Jaguars forced combined in the last 3 games?
3.
Exactly 3. 2 against Kansas City, 1 against Baltimore, and 0 against the Detroit Lions. That's just inexcusable. And that's what leads to almost 37 minutes of possession, too.
Yeah, so that, and then other things I always look at, of course, are turnovers and sacks and penalties. Some of the other things, outside of the catches and the touchdowns and the runs. We only had that 1 turnover to start the game, so we had 59 straight minutes without a turnover. We got it out of the way to start the game. Wasn't like anything happened later in the game that hurt us. We had 5 penalties for only 24 yards, so that must mean not a lot of pass interference or anything. They had 1 penalty for 10 yards, and then I think they had maybe 2 sacks, and we had 0. I can't remember the exact stat, but what I'm getting at is it wasn't like they had a huge disparity in turnovers. It wasn't like, we shot ourselves in the foot with 10 penalties for 100 yards. This was strictly just being beat between the lines, them tackling us, them stopping us on 3rd down, and us not being able to do that to them. Yeah, we just simply were not able to execute. Bright spots of the game. Christian Kirk was the only one that really looked like he came to play on offense with Trevor Lawrence. The ETN fumble, I want to say the best things about ETN as much as I can, but that's obviously inexcusable as well. Zay Jones, I know he's injured with a chest injury right now. There was a point where he had, I think, 6 targets with 0 catches. You gotta pull 1 or 2 of those in at some point. That's just inexcusable. But yeah, the team just wasn't executing. The offense wasn't clicking. Couldn't really make any stops on defense either. The Lions were having their way. Like I said, the dump offs, the soft coverages, the Lions were finding the soft spot. So the Jags lose 40-14 after both of us projected a Jags victory. I think I said 31-28. You were a little bit more modest with your score prediction. I think you said somewhere around like 24-21 or 24-20. Yeah.
What was that?
Yeah. I think I said 27-24 maybe, but
yeah.
Either way, I was 10 points off that on our end and 13 points under on their end.
It's a bad day when the over for a game hits and your team only scored 14 points. So, that's a blowout game against you. So very difficult, especially coming off a win against the Ravens that it felt like, okay, we can build off of this. This team's got momentum. And to lay an egg like that at the start of December, thinking we might be playing meaningful games in December. And anything else on the Lions game for you before we move ahead? Well, wait, let's talk about that, the Trevor Lawrence injury real quick. Obviously big injury to Trevor Lawrence, at least what it looked like on TV right before the half. Never a good time when you're seeing players kneel on both sides of the ball over a quarterback. Last play of the first half, Cam Robinson kind of doing what he does best, just letting the defender blow right by him and get a hit on the quarterback and just kind of wrapped Trevor's body around him awkwardly. It was a weird twist, uncomfortable fall. And I think all Jaguar fans everywhere said, well, this season's over, potentially the beginning of next season's over, and who knows what his career looks like because it looked bad.
Yeah, so, I mean, it looked bad. All the reactions were negative. He came back in the game. I don't know if he was trying to tough it out or if he is okay. Haven't heard a ton this week so far. I think he's listed as questionable, so they haven't ruled him out. I don't know. What are you hearing on your end?
Yeah, so it's a toe injury that he's got listed right now as a toe injury, not even a upper leg injury or an ankle injury, knee injury. and he is currently in one of those, not a walking boot, but a foot boot, I guess, if you will.
Like an air cast for the foot or something.
Yeah, just something for the foot. Marissa Lawrence posted on Instagram a story of them out somewhere, and you can see him with the foot boot on, the air cast on. Looks like he's got a TENS unit hooked up down there to pulsate through his feet, whatever is going on with his nerves. But all things considered, pretty big sigh of relief for the Jags fans when they did see him come back onto the field, albeit didn't amount to much, losing by 36 points, is it? 20. Why is my math wrong? 26 points, yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
And we avoided the biggest blowout of the day thanks to division rival Colts, who lost 54-19 after the Cowboys put up 33 in the fourth quarter. So, but we'll get to that. But let's move ahead to the Titans game.
Last thing I was going to say, though, real quick, just about Trevor Lawrence. One play, I think it was in the third quarter. I think we ended up scoring. It was on the long drive we had. He had Marvin Jones Jr. on the right sideline, had his man beat, and Trevor Lawrence underthrew him by 3-4 yards. If that's out in front of Marvin Jones, easy touchdown. Almost gets intercepted. Actually, you can't be having that. There's absolutely no room left for mistakes like that. If anything, throw it long. Who cares? But you cannot underthrow it. That's how stupid picks happen. That, and then the Evan Ingram drop on third down across the middle, very clearly, got spooked by the defender. I get it. I'm not saying I would make that catch, but you got to be able to help your quarterback out. And you got to be able to help your quarterback out when you're losing and trying to mount a comeback.
And you were talking about sacks earlier. Chad Muma actually had 1.5 sacks from the linebacker position, and Devon Hamilton had the other half of that second sack there. But Christian Kirk, 6 catches, 104 yards, leading the way receiving-wise. No other Jaguar receiver had over 30 yards receiving, so that's terrible. Evan Ingram, 5 catches for 30 yards, rushing the ball, 13 for 54 yards from Travis Etienne, 4 for 32 yards from Trevor Lawrence. And Trevor Lawrence, 17 of 31 for 179 yards and a touchdown in that game against a Lions defense that we thought we would be able to take advantage of, and we were not. The Lions had the mindset of looking across the field at a team that they perceived to be much worse than them, and they played exactly that way. They bullied us. They dominated us. Hell, we looked a lot better against the Chiefs than we did against the Lions. We went through our 2 toughest games, the Chiefs and the Ravens, and looked better in both games than we did against the Lions. But Lions have won 4 or 5. Their only loss was that 3-point loss to the Bills, and they're very much in the NFC wildcard hunt right now, albeit a little bit on the outside, but sitting at 5-7 in the way they're playing right now, still a chance to make some noise here in December. But let's move ahead to the Titans game. Again, fans out there listening, thank you for being here, and stick around with us right here on this episode. Jags Titans talk coming up, followed by NFL talk as well. And the Jaguars travel to Tennessee in Week 14 to take on the Titans in Nashville. Kind of a weird feeling about this one, strictly because by this point you would assume your team has already played each divisional opponent once. The Jags have not played the Titans yet this year, yet here they are marching into Tennessee to face a Titans team that lost to the Eagles last week pretty handedly at the hands of A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts. But Kyle, thoughts on this one, Jags-Titans on Sunday?
Probably going to be an ugly game. Titans aren't exactly setting the world on fire with their offense either. Their defense is decent, but nothing great. They're leading the division. They're 7-5. They're not a great team, but, in the AFC South, it works. Like I mentioned, that's kind of one of the frustrating things about that loss to the Lions. We could be 5-7 versus 7-5 this week, going head to head. If we win that game, then we're 1 game behind, which would be an incredible feeling. With that said, I've never been a huge Tannehill Titans guy, but, they do deserve some respect. They were the 1 seed last year. They have been in the playoffs. They have also been able to dominate us, so we don't really have a lot of room to act like we're better. I just don't believe that, their team is, even as good as they were last year. Derrick Henry always a threat, but should be a pretty close game, but, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, the more I watch the Titans, the more I read about the Titans, watch the highlights and so on, the more confused I get about how this team has found success. There was a game earlier this year where Malik Willis came in. I think that may have been the Chiefs game. Even Derrick Henry really hasn't been himself this year. This team ships off A.J. Brown. Traylon Burks goes out early in the year with an injury. They're relying on Robert Woods, savvy veteran, kind of similar to a Marvin Jones, maybe a little bit more of a possession guy. But it doesn't make sense. None of it makes sense. Austin Hooper's the threat at tight end. But because of that just leads me to believe Mike Vrabel is just that great of a coach. Because he doesn't have a lot of weapons really on either side of the ball. And he just continually puts out a good product on the field, competing against the likes of the Bengals 2 weeks ago, losing by 4 points to the Bengals and keeping that one close. But this is a confusing team. The Titans are. Kyle, when was the last time the Jaguars beat the Tennessee Titans? Do you know?
Probably like 2017.
So we did beat them in 2019 in Jacksonville, 20-7.
Okay.
However, when was the last time the Jaguars beat the Titans in Tennessee?
I'll go a little further back, maybe like 2015.
2013. Wow. 2013. So it's been almost 10 years since the Jaguars beat the Titans in Nashville, 29-27 on November 10th, 2013. And just to make matters worse, and I'm looking at this correctly, I believe the Jaguars haven't beaten the Titans in the same season since the 2005-2006 season. The same, they haven't won both games against the Titans since the 05-06 season. They won November 20th, 2005, and then January 1st, 2006. But since then, the Titans have been on quite the roll. It looks like right around 20-5, 20-4 against the Jags over the last decade and a half. So not a lot of good positive history on our end of this one. Do you see any chance for the Jags in this one, Kyle?
Yeah, I mean, the division games, you always got to be ready to play. I think Vrabel's a great coach. I think he is up there with Dan Campbell. Like I said, kind of a player's coach. Guys trust him. They like playing for him. They know he's passionate and will do anything for his guys. Unfortunately, I think we're coming in at a bad spot. They just, fired their GM and they just got smoked by the Eagles. I don't think that fares out too great for the Jaguars. I think that puts them in a, very, very focused week preparing for this game, knowing that they need to just kind of lock this win up to leave no doubt that they're going to win the division.
Yeah, and I'm looking at some of the statistics for the Titans in this one. They don't really jump off the page at you from a passer's perspective. Bottom 8 in the league in passing touchdowns at 12. Ahead of, the Steelers, Broncos, Panthers, and so on. They're about middle of the road in passer rating, only 5 interceptions from Tannehill or from the Titans passing attack. I don't know how many are from Tannehill or Willis in this one. But as far as passing goes, this team doesn't really scare you that much. But they're going up against a Jags secondary that just showed the world, how vulnerable they can be. So maybe this is an opportunity that the Titans can jump out and make some noise in the passing game. That being said, maybe the Jags can try and take advantage of the one-dimensional Titans offense because I think that's where the Jags have to win if they do, is they have to shut down the passing side of the ball for the Titans and just sell out on the run and take advantage of Derrick Henry in this one. So Derrick Henry obviously having another good year, not up to his standards, I would say, not really performing at his best, but the running attack for the Titans is always the most potent for them. I would have to look at the stats to back that up. And Traylon Burks is, I think, out with a concussion for this game. So kind of slim at receiver there. And then on the defensive side of the ball, obviously they allowed 35 points against the Eagles just this last week, but they did hold the Bengals to 20 points. So from the defensive standpoint, they are a little bit better. But ESPN matchup predictor has this kind of as a split game. Titans 52.7% chance to win. Jaguars 46.6% chance to win. Kyle, do you think that's a little bit too high?
No, I think that's probably where it should be. I mean, listen, the Titans don't even get 300 yards a game total. That's pretty crazy. They average, I think, like the third most or fourth most rushing attempts a game, and they pass they're third from the bottom on passing attempts. So like you mentioned, their game is very much centered around run the ball, control the clock. score a touchdown, and then, hopefully it kind of, can get a stop or two on defense. Jaguars let up 30 or 21.5 points a game. Titans only let up 18.3. So I know I said their defense isn't great, but I think this has a lot to do with the way they control the game and keep the ball in their hands. Obviously, they let up some points against the Eagles. As far as the yards that we let up, Jags and Titans let up about the same amount of yards, but we're averaging 60 more yards a game. We're about 351 in yards per game, which is middle of the pack or so. But yeah, for them to only be getting 291 a game is pretty wild.
Yeah, that's a pretty low mark for a team that is not only leading the division but has made noise in the playoffs the last few seasons. The yards allowed are very similar. What concerns me is the Titans allow a lot of passing yards, and they only allow 83 yards per game rushing. So ETN's going to have to get cooking, whereas the Jags allow over 113 yards per game on the ground. So that's obviously a vulnerable spot for the Jags. Maybe Derrick Henry is able to take advantage of that and have one of those like vintage Chris Johnson Titan games where he used to just run all over the Jags. Or that time in 2018 when you and I were in Nashville and we saw Derrick Henry run for 4 touchdowns, the 99-yarder where he just stiff-armed Barry Church.
I think it was AJ Bouye, maybe.
Maybe it was Boy. Well, I think he stiff-armed like 3 guys on that one carry.
Yeah, he made.
I think one of them was Miles Jack.
Yeah,
maybe. But yeah, that was an embarrassing play. 99-yard touchdown run by Derrick Henry in that one in 2018. But let's get to score predictions unless there's anything else from you, Kyle, on this matchup.
Yeah, I got nothing. I mean, I think it'll probably just be a classic AFC South. Could be an ugly game. I mean, I don't know. I think every game the Jags are in has the ability to be ugly.
That's true. At least ugly for the Jags. That's one way to put it. But let's get to score predictions here. The Titans are favored by 4 right now. Over-unders at 41. Kyle, what is your score prediction?
I'm going to roll with the boys again, and I'm going to say 20-16 Jaguars.
Just like the Bengals beat the Titans 20-16 2 weeks ago in Nashville, Kyle's going with 20-16 Jags in this one. I am going to go 24-20. So I guess we're both taking Jags 20 points, but 24-20. I think the Titans are going to control the clock and control the ball a little bit more and probably take advantage of that time of possession, whereas the Jags might score some touchdowns, but then also turn around and match each touchdown with maybe 2 punts. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to go with 24-20 in this one. Titans over the Jags, and that kind of puts to bed the AFC South for this year if the Titans can get this one. That's another thing to think about too, is the Titans are almost playing to clinch the division this week against the Jags. So that's something to think about there. So hope the Jags can switch the narrative here and flip it up and take advantage of a poor passing defense from the Titans. But let's get to some NFL talk for Week 14 coming up and looking back to Week 13. Kyle, what are you buying after Week 13 of the NFL season?
Let me think here. I never have these ready, do I?
No, you're good.
I mean, the Cowboys, I don't know. I know that was, they're playing the Colts and everything, but the fact that they could put up 33 like that, I've never seen that in a quarter in the NFL. I think they're legitimate, for the playoffs. They play in a tough division. It'll be interesting to see how it shakes out. I know they probably got some interdivision games. They tend to stack those to the end of the season. Even if they make it as the 5 seed in the wild card, I think that whoever they'd be playing, which I guess would be the 4 seed, they're going to have some issues.
Yeah, the Cowboys do look like the real deal, which I think a lot of people are somewhat surprised about after they've been on a pretty steady decline over the last 2 years. And then, they come out and they're performing at extremely high levels. 54 points is extremely tough to score in the NFL, and they did it pretty simply against the Colts there. I do want to point this out, not that I'm buying this. I do like how the Commanders and Giants are embracing the World Cup and decided to end in a draw in Week 13. Maybe the draw soccer vibes were in the air, and the Commanders and Giants 20-20. Really, which funny enough, I think a lot of people were excited for whoever won that game. It kind of maybe helped some clarity within that conference. And it is the ultimate Washington, New York thing to do, to just not resolve anything in their game.
Yeah.
We're just going to tie and keep things confusing. So
yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that affects the seeding too down the stretch. That half game in there. I think the Giants might be the Commanders might be on a bye this week, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So we'll see what the Giants and the others do in the division.
Well, I'm pretty sure with that tie, if either one of them had won, they would have.
I'm sorry, the Giants play the Eagles. My mistake. The Giants must have a bye week 15, which is pretty late. No, never mind. Excuse me. The Commanders is who I said had a bye. Sorry about that.
Commanders have a bye.
Yeah, Commanders
but
do have a bye.
Pretty interesting. I think, if I'm not mistaken here, the Seahawks are currently in the playoffs ahead of the Commanders simply because of the game in hand and not a bye. So
Correct.
Kind of interesting to watch that. And then the other kind of interesting thing is the Vikings beating the Jets on the goal line. That's now 2 victories that the Vikings have kind of come away with on the 1-yard line at the end of a game. A lot will remember the Bills game from a few weeks ago where Josh Allen fumbled the ball and the Vikings recovered it for a touchdown with like 30 seconds to go. And then this one looked like the Jets, first and goal from the 5 or the 4, and they had, 4 plays to punch it in. Vikings defense stepped up. So they found a way to win. They're sitting there at 10-2, so they're looking pretty good. But what I'm going to buy is I want to buy the Seahawks again, but I feel like I've already bought them too much. But I am going to buy the San Francisco 49ers. They made Tua look like rookie Tua, and he has not looked like that really all season. I was extremely high on the Dolphins going into this game. I picked them to win this game. And I know I bought the 49ers second half defense last week on this podcast. I'm buying the whole ass team. They scored 33 points, and they had, I'm going to need a line here, Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, playing for most of the game, and they still found a way to win. They're making the most out of the Christian McCaffrey trade, and they're literally letting their defense carry the load in stopping opposition offense. And they're a fun team to watch now. So,
I mean, they're a team that, like, it seems like at the beginning of the year, like after a game or two, they're always you don't want to see them team. You don't want to play them in the playoffs. And I think they're rounding into form. Kyle Shanahan loves to run the ball, loves the pre-snap motion, and their defense has been unbelievable. They got 2 really good receivers, and I think you're absolutely right. They're in a really good spot.
Yeah, I'm liking them. And then as far as selling, what are we selling after week 13, Kyle?
I mean, I think I sold them earlier. I said that they might not even make the playoffs at this point, but the Jets are not good. I mean, I know they came down to the wire with the Vikings, but I think they're sitting at the 6th seed now, or no, the 7th seed in the AFC. So they play the Bills this week. I think the Bills are going to completely waffle stomp them. And then we got the Patriots and the Chargers right behind them at 6-6. So if the Jets lose this, they go to 7-6. If the Patriots, who are against the Cardinals, or the Chargers, who are against the Dolphins, win, they would each be 7-6, and they would be tied with the Jets. I don't know what the tiebreakers look like. But yeah, I think the Jets with Mike White, I think I picked my lock of the week last week was the Vikings against the Jets, because the whole Mike White experience. He had a good game. I'm not really hating on it. I just don't know how viable it is.
Yeah, he had almost 400 yards again. I think he had 370, if not more. But he had 2 interceptions, no touchdowns to show for it. So he's getting a lot of passing yards, but not a lot of points on the board for them. I do want to amend my buy of the week. I feel dumb. I'm buying the Detroit Lions too. We just spent 15 minutes talking about them, but I'm buying them. I'm going to go ahead and sell the Los Angeles Chargers. They go out, they lose 27-20 to the Raiders. That team had so much hype this preseason. People were talking about them contending with the Chiefs in the AFC West, and is this Herbert's year to pop off and really, show us who he is as a quarterback. That team got Keenan Allen back. That team has Mike Williams back, and that team looks like shit. So the Chargers, I'm selling them. There's just no excuse for what they're doing. I don't know if it's Brandon Staley. I don't know if they don't have any excuses. They have Austin Eckler. They have Justin Herbert. If you looked at their team on paper, and I feel like we can say this every year about them, They have one of the best rosters in the NFL, from offensive weapons to defensive weapons, and they cannot put it together to be successful. So I'm selling the Los Angeles Chargers. They are not a good football team. I don't think they'll make the playoffs either. You're saying the Jets won't make the playoffs. I'm saying the Chargers won't make the playoffs right now, and they're a team that a lot of people had as maybe a sleeper in the AFC.
That leaves the Patriots then.
Well, I don't like them either. So someone's going to come. The Jags are going to come out of nowhere. That leaves the Patriots.
Well, for in the hunt, the Patriots are 6-6. Then you got the Raiders and Browns and Steelers at 5-7.
So right now the wild cards would be the Bengals, the Dolphins, and the Jets, and then in the hunt would be the Patriots and the Chargers.
Yep. I mean, you could probably put the Raiders in the hunt.
Raiders, Browns, and Steelers are all 5-7.
Yeah, they're in the hunt to be in the hunt. They're like on deck to be in the hunt.
They're sniffing.
Yeah, they're sniffing.
They're hunting. They're sniffing. Here's what really sucks. This feels really bad as a Jags fan. We've been excited about the Jags at points this season. The Jags are 4-8, and they're behind the 5-7 Raiders, 5-7 Browns, and 5-7 Steelers.
Yeah, I mean, thank God, like some of these other teams, the Raiders had some hype. The Chargers, like you said, had some hype. Obviously, the Browns they were in the news. And the Jags, like, kind of just are hiding behind that, which is great because, we didn't have a ton of super high expectations. So I don't think we're catching as much flack as some of these other teams are.
Also, what really sucks is in the AFC, from bottom to top, it goes Texans, Broncos, Jags, Colts. The Jags have lost to the Texans, Broncos, and Colts this year. Yep. So the Jags just aren't able to get the job done against these bottom feeder teams in the AFC. So anything else you're selling, Kyle? I actually have a question for you.
Yeah.
Right now, if you were going into the playoffs, Bengals or Bills, who are you kind of riding more with right now at this moment?
Bills. Got to be the Bills.
Really? And like you said with the Cowboys, they're clicking at the right time and all that good stuff. I think the Bengals are my interpretation of what you said about the Cowboys because they've won 4 straight now, 2 against, 1 against the Chiefs, against the Titans before that, 20-16. But anytime you can beat the Chiefs is just a huge accomplishment in this league, especially with Patrick Mahomes. The Chiefs haven't beat the Bengals in 3 straight attempts.
Yeah. I don't know what the Chiefs have been doing this year. They did this against the Colts when the Colts won. They did this against the maybe it was the Bengals the first time they played. They're just not putting teams away. They're getting up. It looks like they're going to win, and then they just completely, let off the gas. So they certainly have to figure something out down the stretch here on how to play a full 60-minute game.
Here's an interesting note for you. Patrick Mahomes, since he entered the league, was undefeated in November and December games.
Yep.
That was his first loss in the NFL in December.
I saw that. Yeah, that's wild.
Other interesting note about that game, the Bengals have now beaten the Chiefs 3 straight times. All 3 times have come in the 2022 calendar year.
Yep. At the end of last season, in the playoffs, and then here.
That's pretty wild too. So the Bengals are the Chiefs' kryptonite right now. So shout out to the Bengals, the Who Dey Nation, if you will. And the Bucs squeak out a win against the Saints. They kind of hold the lead in the NFC South. But similar to the AFC South, I don't want to talk about that division, so we're not going to talk about that division. But the Bucs came back and won 14 points in like the last 14 minutes of the game. But let's move. What's up?
You said 14 points in the last 14 minutes. It was in the last 4 minutes, right?
4 minutes. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Let's go ahead to week 14, Kyle. Best game coming up of week 14. And I will preface this by saying some of us can think best game as far as records go, but I do think we're entering that point in the season where best game might come down to like playoff implications too.
Right.
And what's on the line, because we're at that point in the season. So Kyle, without further ado, your best game of week 14.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go kind of like on the, kind of piggyback what you said. Eagles, Giants. I think the Eagles might be 7-point favorites. The Giants are really playing for the wild card spot. They need a win here. Washington has a bye, so if the Giants were to lose, they would also be 7-5-1. On the other side of it, the Eagles are 11-1, Vikings are 10-2. They're both playing for that first round bye. So the Eagles, even though they're pretty much guaranteed the playoff spot, they want that first spot. So I think that would be a very interesting game to watch.
Yeah, that will be an interesting one, and it makes you think: will the Giants find some magic to try and get past the Eagles? I was watching the highlight the other day from the Christmas time game back in, I think it was like 2014 or 2013, where the Giants punted the ball to the Eagles and Deshaun Jackson, and D-Jax picked it up and just ran right up the middle to win it on the walk-off kick. So those games...
That's what happened to the Jets and the Patriots last week.
That's true. Those divisional games, as much as people like to make fun of the NFC East, those divisional games can be a lot of fun between those teams. They are always fairly competitive between those four teams. My best game of week 14 is going to be, I want to say Dolphins-Chargers. That just got flexed into Sunday night, but I just shit on the Chargers for a few minutes, so I can't say that. Legally, I'm not allowed to. I'm going to go with there's actually not that many good games this week. I'll go with the Jets-Bills game. I know you just said the Jets are a bad football team, and I fully agree, whatever. But the Jets did beat the Bills in New York a few weeks ago. So this is a game where the Jets know they can hang with this team. They know they can beat this team. And similar to, like you said, for the Giants, this is a wild card type game for the Jets. If they can figure out a way to win this game, they can make their way into the playoffs a lot easier. So I'm going to go with that one. But some other games I'm keeping my eye on are going to be the Dolphins-Chargers game is going to be a good one to watch, a fun one to watch. And then also, where was the other one I was looking at? Oh, the Vikings-Lions. I mean, you just can't not pay attention to that type of game with the way the Lions are playing right now and with what we just saw from the Vikings against the Jets.
Right.
You looking at any other games? Any other games of interest?
Yeah, I mean, are we going to do our favorite and our dog?
Yeah, we'll get to that right now. Lock of week 14, Kyle. What's your lock of the week?
Okay, and the reason I asked just because I was going to talk about potentially two more games, but yeah, the lock of the week I think is the Dolphins against the Chargers.
Okay.
Yep, I think the Dolphins had a poor showing against the 49ers. The Chargers do not have a very good defense, I don't believe, at least definitely not like the 49ers have. So I believe they were staying on the West Coast, going from San Francisco down to LA, so they're well adjusted now. I've had a whole week to practice. I think the Dolphins should be able to handle business.
I like that. Yeah, I mean, we'll see what they're staying out in California, or was that?
I think that's what I heard on the broadcast last week.
That makes sense. I think the NFL does that purposely to allow teams to just stay in one location. Right. There's two games I kind of want to take as my lock. I'm gonna go with the. I know we're trying to do close locks. I'm gonna go with the 49ers over the Bucks.
Okay.
3.5-point favorites are the 49ers over the Bucks. I feel like that's mishandicapped at the moment, just considering what we've seen from the Niners, probably in large part due to the Jimmy G season-ending injury. But I just don't think we've seen enough from the Bucks on offense, and I think the 49ers defense is not a spot to try and correct offensive mishaps. So I'm going to go with the 49ers. The other one I was kind of leaning was the Seahawks over the Panthers. Seahawks are also 3.5-point dogs in that one against the Panthers. Let's get to upset special in week 14, Kyle. What's your upset of the week?
So surprisingly, the Lions are home favorites against the Vikings. I think the Lions are -2.
Yeah, 2.5 I'm seeing here.
Is that what it's saying? And all the praise I gave for the Lions is definitely, well-deserved, and I do, believe it. I just think that the Vikings have found ways to win. They really have. They haven't looked great in some spots. But I think, the Lions have a propensity to give up some big plays and a lot of offense. You want to guess it from watching the Jags game, but the Vikings with Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson, who just somehow keeps getting open, Dalvin Cook able to run it and kind of balance out the offense. I think the Vikings will win that game.
I want to take a different game, but I'm going to go with that one as well as my upset special, just because it makes the most sense. There's a lot of thick spreads in this one. Bills are 9.5, Cowboys are 16.5, Eagles are 7. But for the most part, all the favorite teams, even Steelers, Ravens, dude, like you would expect maybe the Ravens to be favored, but with Lamar Jackson's injury, I like the Steelers in that one. Mm-hmm. There's just not a lot of good underdog picks to make this week. Even the Cardinals, Patriots are 1.5 point favorites. That's more of a pick 'em in my opinion. So I'll stick with the Vikings over the Lions as well. But if you were to tell me to pick one more, and hey, you have to pick an upset this week, I would go with the Chargers over the Dolphins. You made that your lock. I'm going to make that my upset just because of the way the Dolphins played. But I do think the Chargers defense is not playing well, nor is their offense. So Dolphins likely could win, but that'll be my upset. But anything else from you, Key, before we head out for the evening?
No, I mean, frustrating. Had a good feeling going into that Lions game. If they put up 40, I was hoping we would put up at least 30, stay competitive, stay in the game. Just didn't happen. So hopefully we look a little better next week, a little more momentum, and it can maybe get a W.
Yeah, and the Titans fire their general manager, ironically, right after the game against the Eagles, where they saw A.J. Brown, former Titan, snag 2 touchdown receptions against his former team. Mm-hmm. Maybe last week was a wake-up call. Maybe this team responds and bounces back. Maybe they were looking ahead to the division game, which is inexcusable in the NFL to have look-ahead games. Mm-hmm. But it feels like that may be what happened. So yeah, hoping for an optimistic, positive vibe on next week's episode of the podcast, episode 145 next week. So as always, stay tuned to this channel for all the Jaguars content, NFL content you want. Subscribe to us on your preferred podcast streaming platform. You can listen to us on the go, on your runs, at the gym, walking from class, wherever you're at work, if you work from home maybe too, or find us on YouTube. If you're watching us, you've already found us, but subscribe to this channel. And like the video, comment your thoughts and all that good stuff. Go enjoy this weekend free of college football. We do have the Army-Navy game coming up, which is always a fun one to watch. See how many times Navy can run the ball. And some Week 14 NFL action. Who do you think is going to run the ball more, Army or Navy?
Navy. Army sometimes does get a little wild and throws it, but definitely Navy.
If you really want to laugh, watch Army's quarterback and how he receives the snap. He almost receives it with his knee already on the ground. He's like 5'8".
And they get real under there.
They get real low, real up behind the center. So just a fun weekend of college football for the Army-Navy game and Week 14 NFL Sunday coming up as well. Thank you for being here, folks. Thank you, Kyle, for being here as well.
Thank you.
But go out and enjoy the rest of your week and go make this world a better place and take care.
How can I be the man when you're the man? How can I be the man when you're the man? How can I be the man when you're the man?